Today's text comes from 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 6 through 15. The letter of Paul to the Thessalonians, chapter 3, verses 6 through 15. Now, we command you, beloved, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, to keep away from believers who are living in idleness and not according to the traditions that they received from us. For you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us. We were not idle when we were with you, and we did not eat anyone's bread without paying for it. But with toil and labor we worked night and day, so that we might not burden any of you. This is not because we do not have the right, but in order to give you an example to imitate. For even when we were with you, we gave you this command: anyone unwilling to work should not eat. For we hear that some of you are living in idleness, mere busybodies, not doing any work. Now such persons we command and exhort in the Lord Jesus Christ to do their work quietly and to earn their own living. Brothers and sisters, do not be weary in doing what is right. Take note for those of you who do not obey for what we say in this letter. Have nothing to do with them, so that they may be ashamed. Do not regard them as enemies, but warn them as believers. The word of the Lord. Idle. Sitting and being idle. Idle as in lazy and not moving, spelled I-D-L-E. Not worshiping an idol, as in Baal, the golden calf, spelled I-D-O-L. Being idle. To Paul, he was writing to the people of Thessalonica, to the church that lived in Thessalonica, because there was a lot going on there. There were people who were being good Christians. As we saw a couple weeks ago, we saw that there was a lot of power in the church, a lot of blessings within the church. They were doing a lot of good work. But sometimes, as more people come in, the less amount of work is getting done. And it seems that started to happen, that those people who may have been working and doing and helping the church to grow suddenly said, I've done my work, and I will sit down and allow the others to do. But instead of letting the others do, it seemed that they became armchair Christians. In football terms, they call it Monday morning armchair quarterbacks. Because they watch the games and then they criticize everything that happened in the game and how they could have or should have done it better. For many Christians, after they get busy and do something, then they sit back and become armchair Christians. They're able to see what has been done wrong, so they're prophets of the past. They're able to see when something goes wrong and say, ha! I knew it would go wrong. Or they'll see that something succeeded and say, ha, I knew it would succeed. But yet rarely do they give their input to help something to succeed or to talk about how it might fail. Instead, they are there to just criticize and point out the obvious after the fact. That's like many books are written, and there was this Torah book, The Hidden Code, where they found a lot of prophecies written in the Torah, in the Old Testament, after they squashed all the letters together and did all these different calculations. They were great at predicting what had already happened. Like most of us, we are very great at predicting what already was. If I had yesterday's lottery numbers, I would have won. Yeah, I know them today, but I don't go back to yesterday. And for many Christians, for many armchair Christians, that's what they do. instead of being helpful, instead of being a part of, instead of participating in the journey and saying, let's walk this together, and whether we fail or succeed, we do it working together. Instead, they sit back, they watch, and then after it has failed or succeeded, they say, I knew it. Thank you, Captain Obvious. That's what Paul was dealing with. Paul was dealing with people who were sitting back, people who were willing to talk, but unwilling to walk. They were willing to see what went wrong and point it out, but they were unwilling to do the work and to help before something may have fallen apart. They were being idle. They were sitting back. They were deciding that they had done their work. But yet, as I think about the human condition, as I think about just being a person and maturing and growing, I realize that my work is never done with me. I learn new things all the time. I grow each and every day. And there is never a level of maturity that you reach that you stay there, because you are so mature and so great that no one can ever get to your maturity level. But instead, we continuously grow. We continuously mature. We continuously learn. And we become new people with new knowledge each and every day. Because as just people, if you think about yourself 40 years ago, how were you? You think about yourself 30 years ago. Were you the same person? If you think about yourself 20 years ago, were you exactly the same person? If you think about 10 years ago, and then think about today, are you exactly the same person you were back then? If you were, there's something wrong. When I go back to New York and I see friends who are still on the street corner that they were when we were teenagers, I realize they are the same people. They haven't grown. They're doing the same things and getting in the same trouble. Many didn't even make it because of being on the street corner. They refused, or they didn't know better in how to grow and mature. And know that you don't have to be exactly the same person for the rest of your life. We grow, we mature, we continue to journey and grow in knowledge. If you are the same person that you were 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, there's something wrong. And here Paul is talking to those who are the same. Those Christians who may have started and worked and then said, I've reached my peak and I'm done, and this is where I will stay. But instead of staying quiet and to the side, they were still giving their input but not putting in the work. That's a problem. For many, their list of what to do was not much at all, but just caused trouble. When I looked up the term idle on dictionary.com, it says not working or active, unemployed, doing nothing. Are you doing nothing in your spiritual life today? Are you doing nothing in your church life today? Are you just sitting back and criticizing? Are you being a prophet of what has happened already? Are you saying, I knew it was going to fail, but I did nothing to stop it? Or I knew it was going to succeed, so I didn't give any input? Idle Christians are just as bad as the fundamentalists who shout and say different things and blow up abortion clinics. Idle Christians are just as bad as those Muslim believers who are extremists. Idle Christians are just as bad as the worst of the worst because of your idleness, because of your silence, because of your refusal to do what is right. Things are falling apart around you. Because of your refusal to do what God is calling you to do, things continue to go wrong. Martin Luther King once said that it was not those who were against him that were the problem. It was those Christians who remained silent that were the problem. Because in your silence, you are giving your agreement with the other side. If you're not standing for justice, if you're not being the voice of the voiceless, if you're not helping those who are struggling, then by your silence, you are supporting those who are causing the injustice. By your idleness, you are being the very same person who is protesting against freedom for the immigrants. By your silence, you are supporting the other side that you might not believe in. But your silence is causing that support. So which is worse? Those who believe in those things that are unjust, or those who stay quiet and allow injustice to continue? We have to think about this, because as a church, as the church, there are too many of us who are quiet when we need to speak up. There are too many of us who choose to sit down when we need to stand up. There are too many of us who are unwilling to be the voice. And I don't necessarily mean that us as individuals, but us and we as Lower Merion Baptist Church, as part of the church. Our silence is deafening. If we are unwilling to stand up, there may be no one else to stand up for those who are struggling. If we are refusing, or maybe we're just too tired because we've done so much, others suffer because of what we've done already. But yet, we can't just live on our laurels. Yes, we have a long history and we're going to celebrate 210 years, but what does that have to do with today? Yes, we may have stood for or against something great back in the day, but how does that speak to today? Yes, we may have been the voice of the voiceless 40, 30, 20 years ago, even 150 years ago. But where does that put us today? For those who are suffering continue to suffer. If we once stood up, are we still standing today? If we once voiced, are we still voicing today? If we once stood up for justice, are we still standing up for justice today? For we only live in this moment. We can celebrate where we've come from, and we do and we will. But we don't have control of the future. But what we do have control of, and where we do live, is this moment in time. This moment. Are we going to be armchair Christians and say nothing until after the fact, and then say, I knew it was going to fail, or I knew it would succeed? Are we just going to give them a tap on the shoulder and say, you'll do better next time? Or will we roll up our sleeves and willingly work to make things better? We often get stuck with we're very small. There's so few of us, and there really are. But it doesn't take many to change the world. Jesus was just one. It takes one pebble to cause a ripple effect. It takes one spark to light a fire. Yes, we may be small in number, but there are many people here. Yes, we may be comparatively small, but there are 20, 30, 40 of us here. Yes, we may not have the megachurch and the hundreds of people that we want, but there are enough people here to be a spark that can light a fire. Rather than being the armchair Christians, sitting back and complaining about things, rather than being the armchair Christians that rather wait and see. The truth is, if you have cancer and you decide to wait and see how it works itself out, you will be dead before long. Are we allowing cancer to grow within us and deciding to wait and see? Are we allowing things to fester because we've decided to wait and see? Are we allowing things and the world to fall apart around us because we have decided to wait and to see? We can't do that anymore. We have to decide. When you think about on the scale of idleness, where do you stand? When you stand on the scale of how active or inactive, on the scale of idleness, are you very idle? Are you very active? Where do you stand? How can you change that? How can you move forward? It's not an easy task. It's not an easy way. It's not easy to get up and do. But if we do it together, if we walk this road together, if we are willing to take the steps that are necessary together, no one individual has to do it alone. No one person has to journey by themselves, but if we do it together, we can make it. We can be the voices. We can stand against injustice. Because when we're standing together, when we're walking together, when one is weak, the others can hold them up. When one is struggling, the others can help them to move forward. When one is idle, the others can lift them up and move them forward until they're able to get back on their feet. It is not about me, the individual. It is about we, the community, we, the church. Are we willing to be the active church that this world needs? Because our idleness has caused more trouble than it's worth. Our idleness as the church, not only us as Lower Merion, but the church in this world, and its idleness, its complacency has caused more trouble than the benefits that it has done. Are we willing to change that? I pray that we are able to walk this journey. We as Lower Merion to be the spark that lights the fire, that maybe one day can help change the situation around us, to unify and to glorify God. I pray that one day we can be not the armchair Christians, but the active quarterback Christians that are out there doing what needs to be done so that the situation can be changed. Rather than being the armchair, it's time that we get up and march and be the active members of this community, of this society, and change the things that need to be changed. Amen.